All right, so I'm going to give everybody a couple more minutes and then we can get James started. Then I'll ask everybody to mute your lines. We'll try and keep the questions organized, maybe even use the chat, and then you can address any questions towards James. And I'll be kind of working the board behind the scenes. Heath, if you want to do a little intro.
Yeah, sure. Just first off, welcome everybody. And as different as this is, we sure are glad to have everyone. And I'm still extremely excited about the year. So I hope everybody's doing well. And we've got a really great speaker tonight. And for those that don't know, he's certainly a friend of the organization. And I've known him for several years, but do want to introduce James Arrow, and he's going to be talking tonight about taking project risk management back to the future. So, you know, he's usually happy to answer questions, so pull those in, and we'll sort them out. But I'll let him introduce himself. And again, thank you so much for being here tonight, and we'll talk after.
Thank you, Keith. I appreciate it. So who's driving? Are you, Cesar? Do you need to let me share my screen?
Yeah.
So yeah, I'll pull my slides up here. Also in the chat, you may notice I've given you a link, or at least a code for menti.com. So when you have a moment, maybe open that web page up on your phone, and there's 3 short questions there. So yeah, that would help me after I've given my introduction to better understand you guys. Let me try here. Should I be able to share now, Cesar?
Let me see. Oh, let's see. I'm going to add you as a host. Try it.
Yeah, looks like, yes, thank you. Here we go. We have liftoff.
Perfect.
And all right, let me know when that starts. Has that started? Okay, cool. All right, so yes, here we go. Taking project risk management back to the future. This is a summary version of a presentation I gave back at the AACE conference in San Diego, 2018. So at that time, we were speaking about quantitative risk analysis, and I presented a maturity model. And subsequently, I've been asked to give a condensed version of that presentation. So essentially, this is the same message, but irrespective of your technical background or your previous experience, I'm hoping this resonates. This should help convey the same message. That being that essentially the future of project controls is going to be rooted in data science, and more specifically data analytics, underpinned by probability theory. I just mentioned that I've got some questions that we can pull up in a little bit. When I get to perhaps the middle of the presentation, I'm going to call up, see your responses against 3 questions I've posted. So if you go to menti.com and enter that code 46, 68, 76, and 4, also put those numbers in the chat feed, you can engage there. So yeah, in terms of an introduction, I started out as a quantity surveyor, and you may be able to tell from my accent, I started in the UK. I've got more than 20 years experience. It's closer to 30, as we're going to find out in a moment. But I've been involved in different types of projects with Fortune 500 contractors and also the oil majors. So worked in oil and gas, also got some experience in aerospace, mining, power generation, government ops, pharma, and IT program management. Currently working as the project risk manager on Mozambique LNG, and as is customary for these AACE talks, I've added a fun fact there. So whilst I was, well, before I was married, whilst I was still young, skydiving, scuba diving was something that interested me, and because of that, I learned about the importance of preparation, learning drills, safety drills, and then that kind of kickstarted an interest in risk management. So that's my introduction, and again, I'm going to come back to you guys in a moment. So please do fill out those questions when you can. In terms of our agenda here, as we said, we are looking to take project risk management back to the future. We're going to touch upon the past. So when we look at the past, here we go. And maybe I shouldn't have clicked up there because now here we go. So we're gonna set our sights on what's happened in the past before we look to the future. Shane's arrived late. I don't know if you can see that. Bless him. How do I get rid of those messages? So project controls and technological progress. We're going to look at the past, and it's going to be my personal perspective. So I'm going to share with you my history, like I say, going back 30 years. This is the first construction project I worked on. We'll touch on that, and then we'll look to the future. So I'm going to borrow from McKinsey here. We'll look at their assessment of construction technology, or Contech, and then we're going to frame that in terms of Industry 4.0. So we'll talk about the fourth industrial revolution. I'll explain that term if you haven't heard it already. And after that, we're going to, there we go. We're going to talk about how we can look at the past, take future trends, and look at ways that we can improve cost predictability on our projects. So we'll look at our current situation, the rise of remote working, and how that may feed into a new discipline or a new approach that we might want to call quantitative risk management. So we've been talking about quantitative risk analysis, but how about quantitative risk management? Let's explore that term in terms of a thought experiment. And then for all of that to happen, again, we need to think about how do we enable this new future. So we're going to talk about continual improvement. So by virtue of the fact that we're here, we're committed professionals, we're interested in learning, but how do we develop an experimentation culture within our organizations? How do we develop 21st century skills that let us employ or use these new ways of working? Please excuse my my co-worker there. Can be a bit unruly. And then, yes, we'll have some time towards the end for Q&A. All right, so I'm going to bookend this talk with a simple statement. Essentially, we live in a transitory world, so no one can predict the future. So despite our best in efforts as risk managers or risk analysts, no one can predict the future. But we work in project controls because we recognize that the delivery of capital assets is inherently uncertain. And whether we know it or not, all of us are to some degree risk managers. As I mentioned before, I trained as a quantity surveyor. So, the clue is in the name there. There's inherent uncertainty in project quantities. So let me emphasize this with this statement. The only thing that is certain is change. So again, as project controls professionals, again, the clue is in the name there, project controls, our purpose is to limit that range of uncertainty. Our purpose, when we talk about continual improvement, is to deliver our projects within a narrowing range of uncertainty. So like I said, I'm going to talk about the past, talk about the future in terms of technology that's available to us. Certainly I personally am very excited about the potential for digital disruption. There's been a lot of buzz about that. There's also recognition that within construction, we're technological laggards. Certainly productivity gains that have been experienced in other industries are long overdue for us. So let's think about how do we get to this new, how do we seize upon this technology to improve our productivity. We shouldn't run at this headlong. We need to be careful. we don't move so fast, we lose sight of the lessons that we've learned in the past. And to underscore that, you know, I'm borrowing from this lady here, Akita. She says, the present defines the future, and the future builds upon the foundation of the past. So with that, like I say, I'm gonna take a look backwards to the beginning of my career, and then 1990. So I apologize for this photo, but here's one way of emphasizing, you know, what I've learned over the 30 years or so since I've been in construction. So there I am with 1 month's site experience as an 18-year-old apprentice quantity surveyor. And as I mentioned, that project there was my first project, the Cannock Chase Community Hospital. Back then, technology was rather basic, you know. Essentially, it was all pen and paper. My computing power was largely my trusty Casio calculator. We had rules, we had processes, but yeah, there wasn't a lot of tech available to us. You know, if there was a significant change order, maybe I would spend several days taking off those quantities, you know, listing them all out, looking up the different prices to go with those different elements of construction, extending those figures, doing the same calculation 2 or 3 times to make sure that the thing added up correctly. Back then, personal computers were coming to the fore, and I was very excited about Excel. I was trying to get the people in the office to maybe consider, you know, the time saving if we could move to Excel, but that was considered to be a bit of a flash in the pan. You know, why should we invest in these computers? Perhaps there'll be something else new. As it turned out, you know, I guess we've all been living and dying by Microsoft Excel. Point being, though, back in the day, decision making was largely intuition based. You know, I was given a pair of site boots, a high vis vest, but it was still kind of new. I remember the guys on site were kind of rebelling, pushing against this, being told how to be safe. But that was really the only formal risk management. When we spoke about cost contingency, the rule of thumb was always to use a fixed percentage. But there's a better way of working now, and we'll come to that. We'll come to how we apply probability. Looking to the future, as I mentioned, a lot of talk these days about Industry 4.0. So if you haven't seen much or read much about that, the World Economic Forum have a really good book on that, written by Klaus Schwab. So essentially, you know, we talk about the first industrial revolution being mechanization, the second electrification, the third automation, and now we have the fourth industrial revolution. So construction 4.0 is modeled on that concept of Industry 4.0. And the idea is that we have a confluence of emerging technology trends and technologies that are likely going to reshape the way the built environment is designed, constructed, and operated. So again, what does that look like? So borrowing from McKinsey here, they do a really nice job at kind of distilling different elements of construction technology or Contech into different constellations. So they talk about the supply chain, you know, novel techniques, technology to help manage the supply chain, 3D printing, modularization. So I know within RICS there's a lot of information coming out now, also in conjunction with Autodesk around IC or industrialized construction, offsite fabrication, robotics, 3D printing, and the like. What I'm emphasizing for you today is digital twin. So again, going back to BIM or Autodesk 360, we can talk about you know, LiDAR or laser scanning. We can talk about you know, simulations or you know, 4D models, essentially digital twins. And ultimately, where we're heading this conversation is data analytics. You know, we can talk about using machine learning, or go a step further, talk about deep learning to perform predictive analytics. This is all what some people may call AI. So AI is more of a common summary term, but we also may talk about advanced analytics, and that's where we're going to focus today, on AI and advanced analytics. All right. So we've looked to the past, we've looked to the future, and then what is our new normal? So, just as we were all logging in here, we just spoke about how now it's been since March that we've all been working remotely. Certainly a few months ago, early this year, beginning this year, people would have said it would take another 3-5 years to get the whole workforce working as we are, but we've all been learning the hard way, but now we've proven that we can work remotely. And that may well trigger new ways of working. Certainly, we're going to be living with COVID-19 for some time. So how may that influence the way that we work? Another thing that we can see as emerging is ubiquitous computing. And like I say, AI is all around us now. So it amused me as I'm trying to make this point, and I pasted this picture into PowerPoints. Microsoft, bless them, have employed or deployed some AI within PowerPoint now, because as you can see, as I put this picture in, it automatically suggested, hey, this is the person taking a selfie. Well, again, neat that there is some AI there, but amusing slightly to help me emphasize the point here that it was just plainly wrong. It wasn't a person taking a selfie. One of the most famous pictures, Mona Lisa, but a fake version of it. So the computer didn't recognize this fake picture. It misinterpreted the picture. And the point I want to emphasize here is, despite all this amazing technology, which is going to allow us to understand more than we've ever known, we are an important element in this equation. We, as domain experts, have the know-how, have our years of experience to validate a lot of this AI, to ensure that we're not taking away the wrong answers that are being generated by these machines. So again, AI, very exciting, ubiquitous computing coming at us from all angles. But again, it should be treated with some healthy skepticism. The other thing to emphasize here, because there's a lot of scare stories about AI taking over the world, but AI is narrow. So people talk about narrow AI in terms of it being limited with the number of inputs that it can comprehend. So again, we load a finite number of inputs. We, on the other hand, as humans, are capable of contextual analytics. We can comprehend an infinite number of inputs, and that's where we perhaps have some advantage over machines. It's not to say people can't develop machines that are capable of contextual analytics, but it's taken since the 50s to get to where we are today, and it may take another number of decades before machines do really fully contest human powers of cognitive ability. So again, the key is that our domain knowledge has never been more important. Okay, and then back to the title of this, getting back to the title of this presentation, talking about how we get back to the future. Let me invoke Akita again. So again, she said that the future is built upon the foundation of the past, and I'm going to invoke some of my training back to when I was at KBR. So that's what I'm sharing with you here on the right. I'm sharing with you from 2003. It might be difficult to read, but that's some of the training I received in Crystal Ball. So again, don't know if you're familiar with that tool, but it's a Monte Carlo simulation add-in for Excel. Again, I didn't appreciate it at the time. Now looking back, I think maybe I was in the right place at the right time. I thought maybe everyone was going to learn this tool, but it's becoming apparent that not all organizations yet employ probabilistic analytical tools to help deliver their projects. So during that training, I had a light bulb moment that stuck with me. And I'm going to share it with you in a moment when we get to slide 13. And I'm hoping you can perhaps carry that into your future. And again, helping you bring project risk management back to the future. So what on earth are you talking about, James? So here really I'm talking about, since computing power has become more affordable, since we've all had desktop computing, we haven't had to do these laborious hand calculations. We can now stress test our projects. We don't have to use a carte blanche fixed contingency number. We can calculate contingency to address perceived or known risk. So again, data science, it's got a long and respected history. But again, data-driven or evidence-based decision-making isn't embraced by all, but it is there available for us. Again, if we can look back in the past, we can see what's worked, and we can use that going forward. So again, the question here to be asking ourselves is, are we developing the right solutions? So I may fall flat on my face here, but let's see what happens if I click on this link. Let me see if I got some feedback from you guys to better understand what you're doing within your organizations when it comes to project risk management and project risk analysis. Is that going to load? Let's see. Present. So yeah, looks like we got some responses, 14 responses. Are you regularly involved in project risk management? So again, slight majority of you said yes. Going back to what I said before, it's probably, again, a fact that maybe we all are to some degree, whether we knew it or not. And again, we're going to talk about this maturity model in a moment. Like I say, that was the basis for this presentation, our maturity model. We're all involved in risk management to some degree or another. Whether it's formally announced or not, that's a different thing. Next one here. Have you played a role in developing a project risk analysis? So that's interesting. Yes, vast majority of you guys, almost 80%, say yes, you have. So that's a good sign. So it does look like maybe I'm wrong then to say we don't have a clear majority of organizations employing probabilistic analytical tools, but maybe we've got a group here which could be skewing the best in class interpretation here. And then the last question I had for you, oftentimes, which approach does your organization employ to make critical decisions? So this is great. None of you said gut-based intuition, because again, I fear too many of our peers that are stuck in the past here. Great that we're moving towards some form of risk assessment. And this is where we're heading with the conclusion of this presentation. We need to be moving, oh yeah, thank you. Thanks for joining that crowd. We should be leaning towards a more objective approach. So nothing wrong with having a subjective qualitative approach, but we should be employing continual improvement, Kaizen approaches to move towards a more objective quantitative approach. Okay, let's see if I can escape out of that and come back to our presentation. How do I call up an eraser? Don't know. Maybe that's not my squiggle. Bear with me a second. That's interesting. All right, I'll ignore the squiggle. Now let's come back over here. Yeah, so rounding off how we get back to the future. So, like I mentioned, we need to double check, are we developing the right solutions? We need to revisit the simplest questions. What's the purpose of project controls? As I mentioned before, it's to deliver within a narrowing range of uncertainty. So again, recognize there's uncertainty in what we do, but each project try and reduce that range of uncertainty. How do we measure success? Simply, we're delivering a project on time and on budget against our plan. Is what we're doing helping that? When we look back at our performance, can we see that we're improving? And can we join groups like this, or can we look into other industries and seize upon our relevant lessons? So to summarize here, it's never too late to improve. We can always learn more. That 20-year-old simulation software is still going to deliver benefits. The same as it did many years ago, it can continue to deliver benefits if folks aren't using it today. I don't know if I mentioned, I didn't invoke Jochen's name, but again, Jochen was the guy that gave me this moment of enlightenment when he spoke about uncertainty within within our cost estimates, within our schedule, within our planning and scheduling. So again, one of the takeaways from this is me trying to encourage you to find your Jochen. Whether that's getting training in at-risk or crystal ball, maybe going to the likes of David Vos software.com, getting training from them. They do some fantastic awareness training and offer some fantastic tools. Recently, I came across a great presentation from William Davis, sharing SPERT, he called it, statistical PERT. He offers a free Excel sheet, which is pre-configured, so you don't have to buy at-risk or crystal ball. He's already developed a simple Excel template, which you can use to run a Monte Carlo simulation. And the other one kind of guru, if you like, is Sam Savage. So if you haven't heard of his book, The Floor of Averages, I recommend that. He's got a fantastic webpage, probabilitymanagement.org. He himself also offers free Excel files, which have also got that random number generator built in. So yeah, again, encouraging you to find your Jochen and carry forward some of these probabilistic techniques into your day-to-day work. So yeah, let's carry that idea forward. What kind of approaches do we have for improving cost predictability? Well, again, mother is the necessity of invention. When we look back, humankind, people have always been fascinated with games of chance. And again, the archaeological record reinforces this. So I often share this picture of a very old-fashioned die here. So traditionally, they were built from knuckle bones. That's why it's an odd shape there. Again, just to highlight again our interest in luck and chance, people often say the die is cast. That is one of the most common sayings. It's actually a Latin phrase, and it's used in a variety of languages, attributed to Suetonius and speaking to Julius Caesar in 49 BC as they entered Italy, taking their army back into Italy to begin a long civil war. So often it's used to indicate that events have passed a point of no return. Now, arguably, the greatest advances in science, diminishing this sense of fatalism, can be attributed to our sense or our understanding, our comprehension of probability. So that is our ability to scientifically discern how likely one event is over another. Again, not everyone does this in construction, but there's no reason why not. So one of the leading figures here is Cardano. So back in the period of the Renaissance, he helped found develop the cornerstone of probability theory, and then people attribute to him the law of large numbers. So when we talk about big data, oftentimes we apply this law of large numbers. Again, the more a game is played, the better mathematical probability predicts the outcome. So again, lesson is here: be consistent in how we develop project data, be consistent in the way that it's captured, how we close out projects, so that, again, we can better learn from the performance of our projects. Again, just reinforce that we don't know exactly what will happen, but with the right data, the likelihood of future events can be calculated. So again, we're coming back to this idea that we can narrow that range of uncertainty and deliver projects more predictably if we employ probability theory. Okay. On this slide then, so I'm just going to take that one step further. So oftentimes projects are stuck in this deterministic mindset. How do we move from that deterministic mindset where we have a single dollar value and we have a single day value? How do we move away from that? So again, we mentioned, since the 2000s, desktop computers, personal computing has allowed us to use Excel or different scheduling tools to take a more dynamic approach. But perhaps we're missing a trick if we're not employing a more probabilistic view of the world. So this is this is perhaps best in class, having a dynamic probabilistic view of the world. Analyzing both cost and schedule, and maybe not necessarily at the beginning of the project, but throughout the life of the project. So we'll come back to that in a second. And then here's that light bulb moment I wanted to share with you. So I mentioned that, so lesson learned is when I admit somebody, I lose control of the presentation, just for future reference. The light bulb moment I wanted to share with you, this Yokken moment, if you like, that again, I was hoping you guys might be able to take forward and use on your project, is simply that we need to move away from this single point mindset. So when we develop our dynamic probabilistic models, or probabilistic models in general, we talk about 3-point estimates. So we have our deterministic most likely value, and then we acknowledge maybe there's a small chance we can overrun, but more often than not, we're pessimistic that we overrun. So we have a pessimistic skew on our ranges from a modeling point of view, and then very rarely, but we can sometimes have an optimistic skew to how reasonable or how accurate our deterministic most likely estimate is. So that's what we're emphasizing here, the potential for us to underrun an estimate. So again, this is that light bulb moment, which kind of changed my view of project controls. So how do we use that? So let me just highlight for you. We use that, going back to my background as a QS, we use that to model uncertainty in quantities. So when we develop a Monte Carlo simulation, we model quantity uncertainty. We extend that calculation, 5,000 times. We extend that against our estimated rate of productivity, for example, and also against our unit cost rates. Each of those randomly running 5,000 times to help us better understand what our potential range of probabilistic outcomes is. So that's our cost risk analysis. And like I mentioned before, if you're not doing it already, at risk, crystal ball, a good tools for that. In addition, people will perform a schedule risk analysis. So again, they'll take their durations, typically against their critical and near critical items, and they'll load similar 3-point estimates. Most commonly, people will use Pertmaster or PRA, project risk analysis. I mentioned William Davis has got a much simpler version for folks who want to dabble. Again, statistical PERT. Oftentimes, people take a serial approach to quantitative risk analysis. So they'll stitch together their output of their CRA and their SRA. Nothing wrong with that, but it does dilute the real value of your time-dependent value. So the best practice approach is to adopt an integrated cost and schedule risk analysis approach. So you can do that using tools such as Safran Risk, Acumen Risk, and I mentioned VOS. David VOS has a tool he calls Tamara, and they all do the same thing. They blend together cost and schedule uncertainty in the same model, so you don't dilute that time-dependent value when you bring it over from one model to the other. Okay, so these are all conventional approaches. Conventional approaches using conventional data streams. Looking forward, so we spoke about construction 4.0. Well, maybe this new era of remote working, driven or forced by COVID-19, is going to cause us to reiterate what we thought in terms of construction 4.0. Construction 4.1 might be one where, again, because of remote working, we're more reliant upon unconventional data streams from the field. We may be more reliant upon LiDAR, laser scanning, whether it's ground-based or it's by drone. We may be more reliant upon computer vision, taking photos, taking video streams, using companies such as Indus.ai to help infer patterns, whether it's safety or productivity. We may use companies such as Rombit to help us with asset tracking, the movement of personnel or plant and equipment on site. We may use companies like Zebra to help with inventory management, the movement of materials and equipment on site. Autodesk for BIM, building information modeling, for virtual reality or digital twin. Companies such as Nplan employ machine learning to help develop augmented intelligence, or to help develop plans using augmented intelligence. And also Aconex, Oracle Aconex, using platforms, collaborative platforms, allowing all parties to a construction project to share data on one common platform, enabling all of this data to go back, potentially, whoops, not that back, this back, to go back into our primary model. So what I'm emphasizing for you here is the potential for us in this new era to use unconventional data streams to develop secondary models. So again, learning from the past, our primary models are still relevant, but we could be using unconventional data streams to perform secondary modeling, using that data to validate what are we doing, based on that original plan. Were our assumptions correct? Were our original findings accurate? So secondary modeling may be a phrase you hear, or you may hear people talking of ensemble modeling. So again, taking this data, doing predictive modeling, but I'm recommending, again, we use that to validate and corroborate our initial point of view. Again, we don't need to reinvent the wheel, but we should be using new technology, new data streams to validate our original viewpoint. Okay. And again, that's what we're highlighting here, using unconventional data streams to feed back, to support perhaps not QRA at one point in time before we start the work, or at several points, maybe at stage gates, or frequently every year, every 6 months, but maybe every month. Maybe again, using this data to go back and inform our ranges, not just relying on subjective inputs, but using real-time data from the field. Maybe we can have a much more rapid iteration and invoke this new era, if you like, of quantitative risk management, not just quantitative risk analysis, but quantitative risk management. All right, so that was the headline news there. And then just let's reinforce here some of the points I'm making about continual improvement. How do we improve our game? How do we get better? How do we invoke this experimental mindset or experimentation culture? Another useful quote here, this time from Asimov. He says, experimentation is the least arrogant method of gaining knowledge. How do we develop a business case for business experimentation? I mentioned before, again, it's good for us as teams to possess a healthy skepticism. We should have a playful attitude when it comes to our work, because that's going to allow us to keep asking questions, keep learning from our mistakes, and take our performance to the next level. So that experimental mindset gives teams that flexibility to recycle and test all ideas and continually improve. A great book that helps reinforce this, it's a little bit more than 10 years old now, but from Harvard Business Press. It's called Discovery Driven Growth. A nice quote here, which I'm going to bounce off you. Here they say the key idea behind a discovery-driven plan is that as your plan unfolds, you want to be reducing what we call the assumption to knowledge ratio. So when that assumption to knowledge ratio is high, there is a huge amount of uncertainty, and one should prize learning fast as possible at the lowest possible cost. So again, this is reinforcing, or this ties back to that slide I've just shown you, where conventionally we have a high degree of assumptions. We load our models with subjective ranges. We should be reducing those level of assumptions using real-time data from the field. Again, lowering that assumption to knowledge ratio. And then I mentioned before that this whole presentation is really a variant or an abstract version of my quantitative risk analysis maturity model. This slide perhaps summarizes this for you. Essentially, again, we're describing that to improve our game, to compete at a high level, we need to frame what we understand in terms of our current capability. So when we understand our current capability, we can set ourselves reasonable development goals. So let's just talk about those conventional dollar and day inputs. When we talk about those conventional dollar and day models, at the lower end of the scale, we have those naive risk managers or risk analysts. Again, we all manage risk to some level, whether we know it or not, but we may be stuck in that trap, that traditional, that conventional trap of applying a fixed contingency number against all of our projects. And the more enlightened crowd may have a more ad hoc approach where they invite external experts or consultants to come in and run contingency analyses on what they consider to be their flagship or most critical projects. Best in class for us is really, best in class for our industry, for our profession, is having a more descriptive approach. So we have frequent centralized analyses using standard inputs. So again, this is best in class. So we need to determine where do we sit on this scale and set ourselves a goal to improve. So again, if we are already here, how do we improve? So again, we should invoke this idea that maybe we can do better by performing monthly analyses using big data, using both conventional and unconventional data streams. So this is where we invoke this idea of having, an augmented intelligent approach using machines and our domain knowledge to try and predict where our project may end up. And then beyond that, in some industries, it's unlikely to be with us for another 10 or 15 years, but other industries are taking a more prescriptive approach. So based on limited resources, they infer what the optimal outcome is. So they not just being dynamic, they're also dynamic to changing circumstances. So within that past paper I wrote, for AACE, we spoke about this new era being defined by advanced analytics or data analytics specific to TCM or total cost management. All right, but this isn't going to be plain sailing. Again, we've got some hurdles to cross here. Boomy, sorry, my friend, you're late, but you're in time for the Q&A, Boomy. When we talk about data literacy, it's been known for some time that statistical and data literacy poses a hurdle. And what interests me is a quote here from H.G. Wells. I don't know if you've heard of H.G. Wells. H.G. Wells was a futurist. Let me share his quote first. He said that a certain elementary training in statistical method is becoming as necessary for everyone living in this world of today as reading and writing. Well, what strikes me is he said that nearly 100 years ago. So this, I don't know if you can see, but anyway, this is from 1926. But this is still very much true. So he was a futurist. He foresaw the advent of the disruptive effect of aircraft in our daily lives. He foresaw space travel, nuclear weapons, and satellite communications. Essentially, the problem that's being highlighted here, and there's a link to a Forbes article here, why companies must close the data literacy divide. Essentially, what's being described here is that a lot of us are leaving full-time education into a world that is developing so fast that we're not being given the skills and knowledge that we need to employ business intelligence or analytical tools. It's upon us to close that gap, to develop those 21st century skills. That brings me back to this idea of data science. Again, data science is going to be key to project controls. And there are 4 key principles here for us to maintain a minimum level of viable data literacy. So we talk about data knowledge, assimilation, interpretation, and I've said it before, and again, it's very important, skepticism. So when we talk about data knowledge, it's about us knowing which are the key terms, which are those, thinking back to our beloved Excel sheets, which are these columns in our spreadsheets that we use from one project to the next? Are we using the same name? Are we using the same column headings? We should be employing the same data terms. We should be collecting data sets from one project to the next. So are we developing a good, meaningful degree of data knowledge? Do we use consistent ways or methods to interpret and help make sense of unfamiliar situations or data feeds, data streams? So how do we assimilate that data? How do we interpret that data to make meaningful observations? And then, like I said before, we should be skeptical. So there's a great website describing spurious correlations. Just because our tools or the machine spit out a finding, we need to be skeptical. We need to be curious, trying to find out why. Maybe data quality is an issue, but again, are we comfortable with some of the driving reasons behind some of our findings? Are we removing bias? This has been one of the key things for us in this new era when we rely upon machines. Have we removed potential bias from the equation? All right, and then, as I say, wrapping up, to conclude, science and probability theory are going to be crucial to help manage project uncertainty in this transitory world that we live in. The field of data science and advanced analytics, or AI, is going to help guide the future direction of project controls. It's going to be our unrelenting curiosity, that healthy skepticism, and our own playful attitude that is going to help us learn and underpin a broader experimentation mindset or establish an experimentation culture within our teams. And then finally, employing, reaching beyond where we are today, striving to have a more dynamic and adaptive approach to cost predictability. That will help us secure that risk-based competitive advantage. And then the last slide, just to wrap up again. Again, I bookended with that slide, again, describing that we live in a transitory world. Nothing is certain but change. I'm empowering you, I'm encouraging you, please. Every day is an opportunity to learn here. So maybe look at the projects you're on. Are there any new emerging data streams that could maybe support or complement your existing work? Does your team have the data skills required to make the best use of the data available to you? So do you have people trained in at-risk, crystal ball, saffron risk, Power BI? I didn't mention that. Again, if you don't have a business sponsor already, now may be the time to support some kind of data literacy training program. All right, so there you go, Heath, Cesar. I don't know if we've got any questions coming through on the chat there, but I'm ready for questions if you have any.
Okay. So anybody have any questions? Let's see if.
I have one, James. Was there anything else in that KBR manual from 2000 that has shaped your career?
Well, yeah, all of that really, because as I say, I was fortuitous to, if you've got a moment, I'll give you the full story. So when I first joined, there weren't enough desks in the office, and they put me on the, the back office desk, which was really a store area. And in those days, those computer programs came in a box. So it was a box of floppy disks, and it said crystal ball. And the claim on the box was to help you predict the project. I thought, this is a little bit far-fetched. I can't believe this. So I asked my boss, whose program is this? And that's how I got introduced to Yock. And so Jochen introduced me to, Crystal Ball, which was that training session. He introduced me to PERT Master. And that kind of led on to, subsequently when I came to, and that was in Leatherhead in the UK. And then subsequently when I came here to Houston, I asked to continue getting involved with that group. There was a need to update the business processes and procedures. Well, actually, not even update them, but write them from scratch. And again, I was still kind of new. Maybe I'd been involved in risk for 5 or 6 years, but that really was fundamental, because that led me to AACE and help volunteer write the procedures, or these RPs for AACE. So writing the procedures for KBR gave me that know-how to get more involved with AACE, and then ultimately help develop that DRMP cert. So yeah, there's a lot of great learning opportunities that came out of KBR, and like I say, you don't appreciate it at the time. You don't appreciate what you've got until it's gone. But we all assumed that everybody was doing this, but now looking back, there were just pockets of teams with that insight. And again, the point of this presentation is that I'm hoping we can all borrow from that and take this probabilistic view of projects forward, because I'm concerned that we embrace these new technologies blindly without really trying to appreciate that ultimately that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to narrow that range of uncertainty. So beware of fake AI. All that we're trying to do with a lot of this new technology is reduce that level of uncertainty around projects. Yeah, there's an awful lot I learned there, Keith.
Pretty fortuitous seating arrangement there.
Yeah, that's right. Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah, it was a beautiful office. I miss that. Used to walk to work. Don't do that anymore.
There is a question of whether this recording will be available later. And Cesar, I know that you are recording it and it will be put on our YouTube channel.
Yes, that's correct. Any other questions? I think you can probably unmute your mics if you have a question.
Very quick question, actually.
Okay.
And that is one of the things that I can see that's very important in risk management. I'm not a risk guy, but that's very interesting presentation. Thank you, by the way. You mentioned something about Equinix and putting all the data on. Is that and I wasn't following. I just introduced to Equinix, to tell you the truth. So how did you put all? So what do? You compile all the results of the individual projects and use it as a reference database or something?
So really what I'm describing there is Equinix as an enabler of digital disruption. So in the past, the traditional way of working is that we have this contractual chain, or we have this linear approach to our work, shuffling one document up and down the chain. Mm-hmm. Equinix and these collaborative platforms allow us to have a more networked approach. I may butcher this, but I just learned of this last month. I think it's called Project 13. So it's an initiative coming out of the UK. Again, I might butcher this. It might be civil engineers, but if you Google Project 13, again, they talk about having a more networked approach to projects, having more enterprise-wide approach to data sharing. So the idea is about expedited data sharing awareness. Again, it brings with it its own dilemmas when we talk about ownership of data, privacy. So then that's why, again, we have this Project 13 initiative trying to change that mindset where perhaps we've been confrontational. It's more about alliances, enterprise-wide alliances, teamwork, coming together, and these collaborative platforms. So again, having a collaborative platform like Equinix, it forces all the parties to have a common nomenclature, to have a more repeatable approach on their projects, instead of us having this mindset where each new project is a unique one. And again, yes, they are to a certain degree, but for us to get better, we need to have a more repeatable, standardized way of developing and sharing data. And that's what AACE does. And it's not just AACE, but that was a good example.
Hi, James. I got a question here. Thank you for sharing this knowledge. I think for me and my organization, in terms of risk, we're probably just a naive stage. We're just assigning a certain percentage across the board for all projects. So to my understanding, as for the future perspective is about probability and impact of the risk. And then I wonder for the unknown events, like the black swan events for COVID-19, how do we capture that? And how do we assign probability to such a disruptive event that can probably just destroy projects? So just hope you can share some light, shed some light on that. Thank you.
Yeah, no problem. So that's a great question. We could do another hour on that. So let me try and keep it simple. And I heard something really nice the other day. So let me invoke the black elephant as well as the black swan. So when we talk about our calculated contingency, what we are talking about are known unknowns. So for us to quantify something, we have to have a reasonable level of insight for us to know that this unknown may impact the project. So on that basis, we develop a cost contingency for the project team to have some funds to manage that uncertainty should it occur. A black swan is an unknown unknown. So Nicholas Taleb Nassim, I think is his name, he actually wrote the book Black Swan, so that's attributed to him. If you take his definition of a black swan, they are by virtue unpredictable. So normally what we do when we run our contingency analysis, depending on our risk appetite, we fund the project at P50, P60, P70. Not asking for your help now, Coco. Basically, that risk of unknown unknowns is funded with a management reserve. So after you've run the contingency analysis, the difference, the delta between the P50 value, if you take P50, and maybe the P80 or P90, that would be your management reserve. So that would give you some coverage, not necessarily complete coverage, but that would give you some comfort or some cushion against unknowns and unknown unknowns. But that wouldn't be within the remit or within the realms, within the grasp of the project team. As the term implies, that's a management reserve, and that would be released by the business to help bail out the projects may then need arise. And again, that management reserve, I said P90. Statistically, maybe P95 is better. So I've just answered your question on black swans, unknown unknowns. I wanted to share with you this interesting term I heard the other day, because there's a lot of talk about COVID-19, and people are talking about that in terms of a black elephant. So I like that because, oftentimes we talk about these low probability, high impact events. I know in KBR, we deliberately did not put in those low probability, high impact events because, again, we didn't want to make ourselves uncompetitive. Yeah, the pandemic is not something that was completely unpredictable. So unlike a black swan, there was a precedent for a pandemic. There are groups such as the World Economic Forum that do this, these global risk surveys each year. It wasn't a new idea, but this was the elephant in the room. This is something that people chose to ignore. This was an inconvenient truth. And again, people could have priced that into their business if they were to take, as I described, that management reserve at maybe a P90 or a P95. But again, it is contentious because it does affect your competitiveness. But again, if we're good at this and we're good at calculating these numbers, instead of putting carte blanche fixed percentages, that should give us that risk-based competitive advantage I spoke about.
Thank you, very helpful. Yeah, the book Black Swan inspired me of the question. I'll check more on the black elephant. It's definitely it's a balance between profitability and integrity for sure for management reserve. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Hey, James.
Sure.
We've got a question from Mike Younger.
Yeah.
I can ask you if you want, Cesar.
Go ahead. Yeah,
Yep.
just make it easier.
I'm just being a cynical British guy, but if we truly know how much projects are going to cost, perhaps those projects would never start.
Yeah.
So
there's a
is
term
there
for
a
that.
bias that's implicit
Yeah.
in the way we do things?
Yeah. So thank you for that, Mike, my cynical friend, because there is an interesting term for that. So University of Cambridge, I think, or sorry, Oxford University. I'm going to butcher his name, but I think his name's something like Bent Flyvbjerg, something like that. He's written lots of interesting pieces, papers, articles around mega projects and how they. He talks about the iron laws of mega projects. Over cost, over budget, over and over again. I think there is ironclad rules of mega projects, and he attributes that to two things. He talks about optimism bias, so people overthinking their capability, underestimating the true time and cost of projects. And then to address your point here, Mike, he also talks about strategic misrepresentation. So that's a fancy way of saying people lie, politicians lie, in order to get these projects off the ground. So it is a well-known feature of projects. And again, I can't think what the name of the group is now, like Construction Industry Council, something like that, coming out of the UK. They're investing a lot in digital practice. This Project 13 idea. To help reduce the human bias in establishing targets and authorizing projects. So yes, it is well known.
That's a great answer. Thanks for that. I appreciate it.
Sure. There was another one here. Was it Leandro? Can you do a complete risk analysis with a spreadsheet like the one from William Davis? So Google his name, William Davis. And SPERT, S-P-E-R-T, or statistical PERT. I only came across him recently. He's with PMI, so it's largely orientated towards IT, but I still think it's really interesting what he's doing there. I think he is advocating you can do cost and schedule. But when I saw his webinar, he was really just talking about days. But again, I loved what he was describing, because it's exactly the lesson I got from Jochen around creating a 3-point estimate, not thinking your deterministic is the only one. So I wouldn't say you could do a complete risk analysis, but I wouldn't discourage anybody from starting somewhere. So if that's your starting point, then jump in with both feet. But yeah, Google him, and you can download it from his webpage, and if you can't find it, connect with me on LinkedIn, Twitter, or email me here, and I'll send a link to you. And then another question here, Megad, could you please share the link, your YouTube channel? That's today. Okay. Yeah, I think Cesar's our guy for that.
Hi, James. What did you say the guy's name is? This is Bumi.
Hey, Bumi. So I want to give you not just his name. So I spoke about William Davis, but I think if you've got a pen handy, write these other names down. There's another guy who's really fantastic, and he seems to be overlooked too often. His name is David Vos. So another name is Doug Hubbard. Doug Hubbard's got some books out, how to measure anything. David Vos, embraces what Doug Hubbard's written about there. Doug Hubbard is rather general. He's not just about construction. David Vos is more specific to construction, to our line of work. And so he, again, is advocating this more objective, quantitative approach to risk. And he's got some great tools. So Tamara is his integrated cost and schedule risk analysis tool. So yeah, David Vos and William Davis are perhaps the two names that you could write down.
Okay, thank you.
And that's V for Victor when I say VOS.
VOSS.
VOSE. Yeah.
OSE. Oh,
Yeah.
thank you.
You're welcome. Yeah. Good to hear your voice.
Yeah, good presentation too. Thanks.
Thank you. Thank you.
Hey, James, this is Adrian. Just,
Hey.
I wanted to, hey, how are you? Sorry. I literally about almost 2 months ago finished my MS of Analytics program at Texas A&M. And something that I have been struggling with, and I talked with Caesar briefly about this, but how I could introduce the ideas of and concepts that we used in predictive modeling for project controls. But a lot of times I run into the roadblock of the data being very, very scattered and not very organized. It's not very actionable data.
Right.
That has been a kind of a hard roadblock because of the infancy that oil and gas, honestly, as a whole, is starting to understand how much power there is in data. But when they gather raw data, it's not in very organized format. And that's something I've been trying to see how I can help assist in, say, a future, because I'm actually in the job market right now looking for project controls work, but I know that because of the COVID and everything that's going on, it's hard. But to bring that to their attention without telling them how to do their job is a touchy subject, and I'm wondering if you've had any kind of interactivity with that.
Yes, I have had. Well, you know, Cesar and I, we co-authored a paper a long time ago suggesting we need to get this problem under control. So we wrote a paper talking about data analytics in project controls. We have a TCMA, or we have a data analytics subcommittee now within AACE, and that's one of the things that we're trying to get to grips with. We're trying to describe the need, or we're trying to develop recommended practices when it comes to standardize data collection, data assimilation, data sharing. So again, to make this theory a reality, we need some rules. There's a guy, I can't remember his surname now, Puya, I can introduce you to him. He's up at the, is it University of Alberta? Or Toronto, sorry. He's doing an ontology, he's leading an ontology project as part of his PhD. So he's working with is it the Worldwide Web Consortium, helping develop a semantic taxonomy or ontology to help develop a readable data set, if you like, nomenclature for construction. So there is no answer. It's still early days, but I know people like Puya are working on that. And also Lance Stevenson, who's the chair for this TCMA or data analytics group within AACE. He's keen to develop an RP. So Adrian, if you're interested, maybe we could recruit you and you could help steer that with your background, because that is a really great course. I've been looking at, I was interested in that. You said Master of Science in the Business Analytics or Data Analytics?
They cover all of those aspects, and they just call it the Master of Science in Analytics at Texas A&M.
Yeah, oh yeah, no, that's pretty exciting. And yeah, it's early days. We don't have an answer, but it's something we're trying to address. We've been speaking about it for 3 years. We just, at the last virtual AAC conference, we've had our subcommittee given the green light. So we had a special interest group now. But it's now a subcommittee, and I'm hoping we hear from Lance very soon. We should be having a second meeting of that subcommittee, and we're trying to get volunteers to take on the development of an RP. So if I can include you on those invites,
Absolutely.
get you working with Puya, because I think you're going to be speaking the same language. You can help me translate what he's doing, and we can work with Lance and develop an RP on that.
Sounds good.
Cool. So it's Cottle, is it? C-O-T-T-L-E. Yeah.
Right.
I'm going to look you up on LinkedIn as well, and Adrian, if that's okay.
Yeah, absolutely.
Cool.
Well, do we have anybody else, or if you come up with questions later, feel free to shoot them over to us. We'll be happy to get them to James, or if there's somebody on the board that can answer them, we'll take care of that too.
Cool. Thank you, everyone. I appreciate the opportunity.
Quick question. Is that pqs.llc or .iic?
LL, yeah.
LLC. All right. Thank you.
Cool. Thanks,
Well,
Leslie.
Well, James, this would be the time in most meetings when I would give you a nice parting gift of some kind, but we're just going to have to put that on hold for a little bit. I can't thank you enough for kicking off this year of talks, and it was excellent as always. For everyone that joined us tonight, I hope you'll stay in touch and join us again. We'll have one of these every month, and in the meantime, we'll be trying to update our website. I know there's a lot of folks out there looking for job opportunities, and certainly if you know of opportunities, if you can get those to us, we'll try to get those on the website as well. But we really look forward to having everybody back next month. And as I said earlier, please don't hesitate to reach out, and we'll be happy to do what we can and answer anything we can as well.
So Heath, I have a question for the ones who are new. I know we have some that are, this is the first time that you've been in with our group. Did you guys all get the newsletter, or how did you get the invite? Did you get newsletter?
I personally got it from the email system. I got an invite, direct invite.
Okay, that's good. That's good. I had updated the Houston Gulf Coast roster, but when you had said that this was your first time with us, right, I was making sure that I had you on the email list.
Yes.
Yes, ma'am. I had that also, and also had an invite from Caesar.
Good.
Okay,
perfect.
Great.
Perfect. That works great. Glad you guys joined us. Welcome.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And anybody that wants to get involved, just we're happy to put you in the right place. So you can do anything your heart desires, as long as it pertains to project controls in this organization. So we'll put you in the right direction.
Hey Heath.
Yes.
Probably good that as board members we introduce ourselves, so the audience that's new.
Sure. I'll kick that off. I'm Heath Whitaker. I'm the president for the 2020-2021 year, and I've been with the organization for about 6 years now. And I've been in project controls for almost a decade now, and currently I'm at Deloitte in their capital projects group.
Okay, I'm Cesar Ramos. I'm the vice president for AACE Houston Gulf Coast for the 2021 year. Also a 21-year experienced, and been involved with AACE for a lot of those years already. So
I'm Valerie Venters. Right now I'm the treasurer of the Houston Gulf Coast, and working with Shane Butt. We're kind of tag teaming this year as treasurers. And so yeah, good. I've been with the group for a long time. And so yeah, glad to have you guys new with us. Shane, you're on there. You're muted.
You're muted, Shane.
You can't shut me up for too long. All right, Shane Buck. I'm in charge of business development on the software side of the business for Omega. Been heavily involved in AACE since I got myself transferred from our Australian operations to the US 7.5 years ago. And I'm the treasurer, the intern treasurer to take over from Valerie, who's been just a wonderful servant. So she deserves a break. So it's my job to take her over.
We got Carol, we got Dathan. You're on mute, Carol.
You're on mute, Carol.
I know, but I can't figure out how to unmute today. Hi, I'm Carol Vinners. Been in project controls for a very long time. Served as officers and worked in the AACE organization in Denver, Colorado for quite some time, and then transferred down to Houston to be back with family and be abused by my family sometimes. Valerie. But I've been part of the Houston group now for, it's going on about 7 or 8 years, and enjoying it, and have served on the board here as officers, and now I'm just at large right now. I've been with Jacobs for almost 20 years, and we are now Worley, so it's an adventure.
Is the Heath is I think you and I probably connected at some point via email. But is there like a list of that if I go into the website, all of you?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
There's a tab that's called Meet the Board.
Oh, okay.
If you go into our do you know our website, AACE-HGCS.org?
Oh, HCGS.
Yeah,
yeah, go ahead, Keith.
I was just gonna say, if you just Google AACE Houston Gulf Coast, it'll pop right up, and then there's a tab in that website that has the board and all of our emails.
Okay, appreciate it. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. No problem.
Dathan was on. Did he introduce himself?
No, I've had some major issues here, so I've been off on trying to get on.
Oh, okay, no problem.
So yeah, sorry about that. But at least I've got a bourbon to support the tiki bar behind you.
Ah, yes. I don't need too much support there.
Neither do I. Not tonight.
So are there any inquiries, general inquiries for the board or ACE?
So as just a feedback, this was our first month to do Zoom, obviously with COVID and all of the issues with businesses. Our venue, the Hess Club, where we have been for 20 years, had to permanently close due to all of the issues around COVID and the business decline. So this is our first month. Did this work out good for everybody? I mean, do you have anything that we should try next time or not do? Or I think we need a little bit of an introduction, maybe a little more opening from Heath, because I think we had some who came in late and it was hard to get in. So maybe we give them more time to log in up front. That way, maybe we'll get more, more ready to start when the speaker. But anything, I mean, did it work out for everybody? This is the first time we've tried it.
I thought it went well.
Good.
Val, just technically, there was something odd about the the admittance there. So I don't know why it was coming through to me. I don't know if you can set it up to
Well, it was because Cesar gave you the host, and then once he gave you the host, that's why I'm saying if we expanded out the opening and let everybody get in, then by the time the speaker gets switched over to host, maybe we don't have that problem.
The other quirky thing that threw me a loop was that whiteboard. So I don't think it was myself that drew on it, but if that happened, so if you can't disable it, there's a way to delete it. I mean, I didn't find that out until the end, but
okay.
Yeah, maybe disable the whiteboard, or there is an eraser there if you need it next time.
Yep. Yeah, we will continue to try to get better at these, but we appreciate everybody's patience on them, and we'll look forward to getting it done better next month.
Good job.
Yay. Thanks.
Yes,
All
thank
right,
you,
everyone.
James. Heath, do you want to let everybody know what the topic is for next month and the date?
Yes. I don't have it in front of me, but let me.
Nathan, he knows.
Sorry, I'm just dying. Yeah, the actual title itself, let me just bring it up. So it's basically, the topic is convergence of workplace, technology and building operations to deliver smarter buildings at a scale in a post-COVID-19 world. How's that for exciting?
Yeah.
What does it mean? So no, basically there's a gentleman who was working up in New York who now lives here in Houston, and they did a fascinating project up there, which I thought I'd like to highlight to everyone. And it's a bit out of the ordinary. It's not oil and gas. So I don't want to freak everyone out.
Nothing wrong with that.
Nice for a nice change.
Absolutely.
And is the date of it? Let's see. It's the second
October
Tuesday.
13th, I think. Or...
Yep, 13th.
Yep.
All right. Sounds like we're done.
Bye.
You're
All
on mute.
right, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.
Awesome.
Thank you very much. Be safe, and
Bye-bye.
we'll see you next month.
Bye, Valerie.
Excellent.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Good to see you guys.
Thank you very much, guys. Thank you for a very good first meeting.
Super.
Thanks, guys.
Cheers.
Thanks, Cesar.
Yeah.